A night janitor with a hidden past as a combat medic saves the CEO during a high-profile launch. His action collides with corporate politics, a PR chief's buried grief, and media scrutiny. The truth wins out. A second disaster proves the system is broken. The janitor rescues children, heals an old wound, and helps transform the company's culture. He finds purpose again, and maybe family, too. The bass from the event soundcheck thumped through the marble like a slow heartbeat. Liam Carter counted without meaning to, 1, 2, 3, 4. He set the yellow caution sign, rung the mop, and watched the water settle into a perfect coin on the glassy floor of Sterling Tower's lobby. Above him, the company's prize device floated on a white pedestal, Aegis AD Pro. Cameras blinked red. Banners drooped like velvet verdicts. Men in narrow suits rehearsed smiles. "Careful with that cable," someone snapped. A pair of glittering heels sidestepped the wet patch, never looking down. Liam did. He always did. At the east exit, he palmed the crash bar. It bit back. Stuck. Again. He leaned, felt the drag in the frame, the old metal's complaint. He took a photo. Sent the note to security with 2 thumbs and a grease-darkened nail. East Exhibit Hall exit, jam under load. Needs fix before live event. He didn't add the thing that rose like a taste in his mouth. Underload means panic. "Mr. Carter?" A soft voice. Small hands hugged a stuffed bear by the ear. Blonde curls. Yellow ribbon. A child in a dress the color of sunlight pretending to be brave. He dropped to a knee so the lobby stopped towering over her. "Hey, do you work in the building?" she whispered, as if it were a secret. "Most of the building works because I do." He offered a smile sideways, as if to keep it from running off. "You lost?" "My mom says I'm not lost, I'm waiting." She tried the word like it might melt. "I don't like loud." "Smart thing, knowing what rattles you." He tapped the bear's nose. "He doesn't either." She laughed once, the smallest bell. A nanny's voice called across the lobby, "Audrey." The girl's grip tightened, then she stood, giving him a quick wave as if returning a favor she'd remember later. On the mezzanine, a woman in a crimson dress checked her reflection in a blackened window. Her palms pressed once to her sternum while no one watched. The dress said invincible. Her eyes said do not fall. Serafina Sterling stepped into light without looking down. "Miss Sterling, 5 minutes," the stage manager murmured, dropping a headset around his neck. The crew scattered like swallows. Dante from security brushed past Liam. "Got your note?" "I'll push it," he said without slowing. That was why Liam sent Dante the notes. Dante pushed. The board filed in through a side corridor, nods that didn't bend, suits that cut, a camera-ready PR smile that never reached the eyes. A journalist in flat shoes took a seat close to the aisle and stopped writing twice to look at the exits. Liam checked his cart, towels folded like bandages, gloves, a small flashlight that clicked clean, the reflex kit someone had once told him was over-prep for a janitor. He ran the habit anyway. He didn't pray, not exactly. He counted. He watched the door frames. He listened to the building breathe. The house lights sink. The lobby became a hush wrapped in glass. The pedestal received a spotlight. A drum roll of applause went up the escalators and came down different. On cue, Serafina took the stage. The microphone found her mouth. "Welcome to the future of saving lives," she said, steady enough to make doubt look like a rumor. Liam slid along the back wall, collecting a spill that had bloomed out of nowhere, a dark halation near the cable ramp. He could feel the bass in the handle. 1, 2, 3, 4. He wrung the mop and set it down. He didn't look up when the sound in the room shifted from applause to something thinner. He felt it first, a silence that wasn't empty but waiting. Then came the breath, 1,000 people taking one in at the same time. The crimson woman reached for the lectern. Her fingers missed. The microphone popped. Liam didn't think. He let the handle go. It clattered, his only loud thing, and then the space around him narrowed to a single task-sized circle. "Move," he said softly, and the crowd parted like it had been trained. Some people are born to run toward noise. Others learn. He had learned. The floor remembered the last polish. It gave back a ghost of his face as he dropped to a knee where the CEO had folded in on herself like a red petal breaking off the stem. A child's voice split the air. "Please. Help. My mom." The velvet rope whipped once, and the yellow dress blurred into the light. Liam's hand found Audrey's shoulder before panic did. "Eyes on me," he told her calmly. "We're going to make space for her to breathe. Stand here. You can be the anchor. Anchors don't run. Anchors hold ships to the world." He touched the side of Serafina's neck. Thread pulse. Too fast, then wrong. Tilted her chin open. The crowd leaned in and whispered the useless prayer of people who don't know where to put their hands. "Dante," he said, and didn't have to raise his voice. "AED now. Kill the music. Clear 2 meters. Cameras back." PR tried to step forward with production hair and a press lanyard grin. Liam's eyes met his and did the job words would have softened. The camera dropped. Dr. Vivian arrived with the steadiness of a woman used to storms. "Nitro on standby. Metoprolol if we get the rhythm," she said, already unwrapping gauze like the situation might be convinced to be ordinary. The Aegis case thumped down. Liam's glove snapped at the wrist. He tore the silk at the neckline exactly where modesty argued against survival. "Pads down." He spoke as much to the machine as the room. "No one touch her. Analyze." The device thought for one beat and made up its mind. "Shock advised," the box declared in a voice without doubt. "Clear." His thumb pressed the truth into her. Bodies flinched. The room flinched. He didn't. Compressions, count in his head, out of his mouth. He didn't say the numbers so much as mark them in the air like chalk on a blackboard. Sweat found its way between his shoulder blades under cotton he never noticed while mopping. Vivian watched the monitor and watched Liam. "Good depth. Stay with it." The machine considered again. "No shock advised." The rhythm that had been broken like glass became something you could walk on barefoot if you were careful. The sirens arrived late and loud and right on time. Liam gave the handover clean. Onset, intervention, response, device model, gels delivered. The medic nodded with the satisfaction of a recipe followed well. Serafina's eyes opened the way doors do after a storm, stuck for a second, then swinging. She found a child's hair ribbon before she found her name. She tried to speak around it all and failed. He put a finger in the air that meant rest. She obeyed like she obeyed nothing else. By the time he stood, applause was trying itself on again. He left it where it belonged. The utility sink was cold and honest. He scrubbed until the sting felt deserved. The metal mirror showed him a man with a face carved into emergency, not applause. In a nearby corridor, a conversation broke out with knives tucked in its pockets. "We bury," said the COO, voice smooth as stone. "If we lead with collapse, we lose the room. We lose the street. We lead with the save," said PR, eyes bright at the thought of a narrative he could write. Human, unexpected, working-class hero. You can feel the engagement. Or you can feel the panic someone else breathed. Stock. Lawsuits. Pre-existing conditions. A journalist closed her notebook and opened her recorder. Upstairs, in a room with too much white and not enough mercy, Serafina lay very still. Audrey slept in a chair with her cheek to plastic rail. The heart monitor did what it had been designed to do. It told the truth in beeps. "What happened?" Serafina asked when honesty allowed speech. "You lived," Dr. Vivian said. "Because someone remembered how." "Who?" "A man your elevators don't recognize by face." "Find him," Serafina said, the old steel arriving through the bruises. "Please." On the train home, Liam stood instead of sitting. He preferred doors he could see and aisles that didn't trap him. City lights did a slow, patient metronome across the window. He counted stations and thought about a desert with too much sky. At his stop, an 8-year-old drawing was taped to his apartment door, blue gloves, a red dress stick figure, and 4 words spelled exactly right: "Thank you for Mom." He didn't take it down. He let it be the first thing the hallway saw. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon and expensive panic. Board members arranged themselves like chess pieces that had learned to stand on their own. The screens displayed line graphs that meant money. No one looked at the slide titled Risk. The CEO's pen tapped twice. We are aligned on discretion, he said like a verdict. I'm not aligned with a lie, Serafina answered, pale, hair pulled back like a scalpel. The hospital bracelet still marked her wrist in bruised ink. We built a device to save strangers. It saved me. We tell that story, or we are exactly the kind of company I refuse to run. Silence did that thing where it gets heavy. Oliver Flynn, head of PR, didn't sit. He stood near the window with the skyline framed behind him like a crown he wasn't wearing anymore. He had watched the footage too many times last night, in a living room that was too quiet, with a bottle that had been put back full. The janitor's hands. The certainty. The child's voice. He had also read the name. A folder lay on the table. Thin, almost nothing. It contained the page with the line where his brother's name ended. Liam Carter, he said, soft as the inside of a bruise. Yes, Serafina said carefully. And he was the medic on my brother's last day. Oliver's jaw worked once, twice. Sergeant Enoch Flynn. Shot through the femoral. The report says triage. The report says he went to the officer. The report says my brother bled out watching someone else receive care. The room shifted its weight from one foot to the other. I'm sorry, Serafina said, because it was one of the few times the words could be exactly what they were. Oliver smiled in a way that wasn't. You want to put a halo on him. I want to put the truth somewhere it can't crawl out from. Both of us think we're saving something. The journalist in flat shoes, across town, threaded through public records like she was braiding hair. She had heard the name too. War files have a smell. She worked around it without inhaling. The classified page took a different kind of call. It cost her a favor she had been saving for a different story. What came back was a detail no one had said aloud. Time from wound to collapse, 2 minutes. The officer had a chest like a paper bag that needed filling. One could be bought time. One could not. She wrote nothing and everything in a single margin. Anger is a kind of oxygen. At a metal table in a basement that wasn't meant for meetings, Dante set a paper cup of coffee beside Liam that tasted like cardboard and loyalty. She wants to see you, he said. The boss. I already have one, Liam said. He meant the mop. He meant the quiet. Bring your quiet, Dante answered. She could use some. The hospital room in daylight looked almost kind. Audrey had colored the whiteboard with a crooked sun. The CEO in cotton and soft socks had a face that was no longer weaponized. Thank you, she said to Liam in the kind of voice people use at funerals and weddings, where truth gets to be plain. I didn't do it alone. He nodded at Vivian. And at your machines. My machines worked because your hands did. He had no answer for that. That did not sound like weakness. He stood, because sitting would have been too much like staying, and staying was something he had taught himself to survive by not doing. Come to the announcement, she said. I'm going to tell them I have a heart that misbehaves and a company that will not. He looked at the little girl's son on the whiteboard. He looked at the bracelet on her wrist with her name in block letters. If you tell the truth, I'll stand next to it. Outside, Oliver pressed the bridge of his nose and swallowed the old fire. He wasn't ready to let go. He also wasn't ready to hold it forever. Midpoint is where a story decides what kind it wants to be. This one chose public. They held the microphones in the same room that had pretended nothing bad could happen in rooms like this. The floral arrangements tried to reset history with lilies. The podium's edge had a new softness in case anyone needed to grab it again. Serafina stepped to the mic in navy, face bare except for eyes that did not waver. 2 days ago, I needed the thing we make, she said. I want a company that is brave enough to admit its leaders are human and its heroes wear gloves. Liam stood to the side like a scaffold. If you looked at his hands too long, you could see the rhythm living under the skin. When she asked him to speak, he did, but only the plain things. Learn CPR, he said. You don't need a title to press down. The story traveled the way stories now do. Fast, inaccurate, corrected, owned, memed, weaponized, then finally returned to something like itself. Stock dipped and shrugged off fear like a coat. Donations and volunteer lists grew teeth. People touched their own sternums while they watched and tried to find the center. In the new calm, the company planned a smaller thing meant to be safe, a charity evening at their research center, a building that hadn't learned how to carry a crowd yet. Liam went because his daughter had drawn him a poster and taped it to his borrowed shirt with pride. "Don't run," she'd told him. "Let them clap without you leaving." He stayed near the back, where exits live. Dante caught his eye and nodded toward the East Hall. "Maintenance claims the fix is scheduled tomorrow. Your note about the crash bar." "Tomorrow," Liam repeated, like a weather report. He marked the secondary egress in his head again. He looked at the ceiling and tried to hear the building. The first sign was a flicker that belonged in a different room. Then the smell, not candle, not kitchen, but the kind of smoke that remembers wire. A caterer shouted. Someone laughed because sometimes panic dresses like a joke on its way in. The alarm came late and loud and then perfect. The crowd squeezed in the place where crowds always choose, closest door, jammed in an instant. The crash bar balked, stubborn as old metal under new force. The line of human beings began to curve into something none of them would admit was a crush. Secondary. Dante's voice cracked the hallway like an axe. He started the push, moving shoulders with authority and apology. Left corridor. Follow my voice. A scream traveled from a side room, high and bright in the frequency that grabs the body by the spine. Children. Liam moved before language caught up. He grabbed a linen and killed its white with water, bound it across his mouth the way memory had taught him. He dropped to a crouch, because smoke respects ground. He shouldered the door and found it magnet-locked by the system that meant well. The pry bar in the maintenance kit complained once and then obeyed. Four small faces swam up through gray. Audrey's eyes found him like she had kept the map in her pocket. "I knew you would," she said, tears making tracks he could not wipe. "We walk on the wall," he told them, turning chaos into a game because games are how bravery fits in little hands. Hand to shoulder. When the air is mean, we get lower than it. A metal sound above didn't mean to be a sentence, but it said, "Now." He took the hit on his left side and turned so the beam had him instead of them. Pain opened a door he'd closed years ago. He went through anyway. Out in the night, the air tasted like rain that hadn't arrived yet. The kids made sounds that weren't quite crying. Dante's hand found Liam's good shoulder hard enough to be grateful. Inside, the jammed exit finally yielded to force and luck. Outside, cameras did what they always do. They watched a man in a borrowed shirt give back 4 children. The narrative, if it needed one, had shifted. The device saved a leader. The man saved the room. The system had failed them both. 2 days later, the knock on Liam's door was a surprise only in sound. He had expected the conversation in a hallway or a parking lot where apologies can run if they need to. Oliver Flynn stood with a small envelope, like a hostage negotiator who brought the wrong thing. "Can I come in?" Oliver asked, because permission was the first honest thing he could offer. The apartment smelled like soap and something warm. A paper on the table had crayon sunrises in a row like practice. Liam's arm rode a sling, his shoulder muttering about beams and decisions. Oliver laid the envelope down between them like evidence and mercy. A photo slid out of a life that had been cut in the middle, a young man with a grin that fought discipline and usually won. "Enoch," he said, and the name didn't break him this time. It set him. "I read the report again," he continued, voice rough from disuse in this register. "Not the one the public gets. The timed one. The truth is mean, but it doesn't lie. 2 minutes from hit to gone. I pretended you had more than that to give him so I could be angry at a person and not a war." Liam's throat tightened in a way that had nothing to do with smoke. "I've spoken to him every night since," he said. It wasn't confession. It was geography. Oliver nodded once, like tipping a hat at a grave. He took out a small silver badge with a name worn smooth by thumbprints. "He carried this," he said. "I don't know what you carry. I can't take it. I can put this down between us and ask if we can stop bleeding all over each other." Liam picked it up. It had the weight of something that had watched everything. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more," he said, and he meant the apology for 10,000 things and also one. "I know," Oliver answered simply. "And you've done more since than most of us will if we live to be old and good." They sat in the kind of quiet that isn't empty, but full of the decisions you won't know you made until years later. When Oliver stood, they shook hands like men who had just agreed not to drown each other. At headquarters, Serafina called Liam into a room without views. The air there belonged to work. They want to hand you money and a plaque, she said. I told them we aren't a museum. He opened his mouth to decline the thing he predicted. I'm not offering a commendation, she said, cutting through his refusal with kindness sharp enough to do the job. I'm offering you a job. Director of Life Safety and Medical Readiness. The title felt half too big and half overdue in the space between them. Authority to fix what people have learned to step around. Training for all levels. Audits that bite. Doors that open when doors should open. He waited the way he did at fires and war zones for the part that would cost him something he couldn't pay. Conditions, he said finally. 90 days, full CPR/AED training. Everybody. 30 days for known hazards to be fixed or shut down. No exceptions for title. If we fake the drills, I walk. Her smile had tired edges and true light. Deal. He didn't say yes immediately. He looked at his sling, at the drawing on his fridge where two girls held hands in front of a blue pair of gloves. I've been surviving for years, he said. I wouldn't mind building something. Then build it here, she said. No speech about destiny. No rescue of each other promised. Just a job and a promise to get out of his way when he needed room. Sometimes the height of a story isn't the shout. It's the moment two people agree to do boring, relentless good in public. They didn't unveil a statue because statues can be an apology pretending to be gratitude. They unveiled a practice, a standing morning drill that started with coffee and ended with sweat, a calendar that refused to forget, red boxes on every floor where ADs lived like fire extinguishers, not artifacts. The first month, people rolled their eyes and took the class. The second, a receptionist in another building carried a man back from Blue with hands that shook but didn't stop. The third, the eye-rolling stopped. 6 months in, the lobby of Sterling Tower had a bronze at its center anyway. Not a face. Not a hero. Just hands in blue gloves, hovering over air mid-compression. The plaque didn't name a savior. It named a promise and a memory, for Enoch Flynn and for anyone who presses down when it counts. Oliver stood at the unveiling with his palm over the badge in his pocket and let tears do their job without hiding them. Farah, the journalist, wrote about systems and the ordinary heroism of maintenance notes. The story kept living without asking for permission, which is the best a story can do. Liam's office door said director. It also had scuff marks because fieldwork doesn't care about titles. He wore a polo with a logo sometimes and the old coveralls on days that needed floors more than memos. He taught compressions with a humor that disarmed executives and a seriousness that made interns straighten in their chairs. Depth matters, he'd say, palm over the sternum of a mannequin. You can crack a rib. That's a good trade. Don't negotiate with the heart. Tell it. He wrote a list in marker on a wall that everyone could see. Doors open. Alarms talk to people, not just other alarms. Everyone is responsible for everyone. Practice like you'll wish you had. Fix the thing. Don't email the thing. Bonnie and Audrey became a unit that moved together through school hallways like weathers that matched. They made posters that said heroes wear gloves and handed them out at a city fair where strangers told their own stories about the day someone pressed. The girls collected them like seashells. On a Sunday in the park, the four of them sat on a blanket that had lived 100 summers in someone else's family. The girls chased a kite that didn't want to belong to land. Serafina wiped mustard from her thumb and watched wind do what it wanted. You look different, she told Liam without looking at him. Not less tired. Just not tired from fighting yourself. He considered that and gave it the dignity of not deflecting. I stop in the lobby some nights, he admitted. Look at the hands. Remind myself it's not my hands anymore. It's all of ours. Good, she said. It wasn't a declaration. It was a receipt. At dusk, the building lights came up in the city like a circuit testing itself. Liam returned to Sterling Tower for a night drill. He brought the mop even though his badge now opened doors it hadn't used to. He poured a bit of chalk dust into the bucket and used the handle to sketch an evacuation route on the gleaming floor. Trainees watched the path appear in white lines that would rinse clean but remain in muscle. Second exits aren't side quests, he told them. They're the story if the first page rips. He pressed the mop head down once like a stamp and straightened. The metronome in his head kicked in for no reason, and every reason. 1, 2, 3, 4. It wasn't the soundtrack of panic anymore. It was the beat of practice. He looked up at the bronze where hands hovered over nothing and everything. He didn't think about deserts. He thought about offices and kitchens and lobbies and bus stations with red boxes on the wall and people who would, because they had learned how, step forward when the room turned to glass. For the first time in longer than he could count, he let himself stand still. The building breathed. He breathed with it. And somewhere between the mop and the metronome, between a child's crayon sun and a badge in a pocket, he understood that saving himself hadn't been one moment on a stage or in smoke. It had been this, the ordinary work that keeps other people alive.